Very good morning to you.
Hi, good morning, Joe.
How was the weekend?
Wonderful as always, Joe, and you?
Very nice.
And yesterday was?
Happy birthday to you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, now let's just quickly about what happened yesterday with the aircraft.
Right, Joe, I often say to anyone that bothers to listen that airplanes are very faithful machines. They fall out of the skies because human operators are unfaithful, more often than not, very dishonest. If we were to match the faithfulness of aircraft, they won't be falling out of the skies. And they're so beautifully, made. For instance, a four-engine aircraft has got four independent engines, and those engines have independent, tanks. And what's more, you have the capability of firefighting in mid-air. And so anything can happen to any engine, and it gets burst, even if it catches fire. One or two bursts of fire extinguishing chemicals, the thing goes away. And then the pilots do the necessary quick adjustment, shut down the bad engine, and then fly with the rest to the nearest airport and make emergency landing, just like it happened yesterday.
What got lay people confused is
that's
the
why.
fact that it is said that the engine breaks up.
Right, very often that may happen. One little, remember when I taught you about jet engines, I told you about the three sections of the jet engine, where you have the fan that sucks in the air required, and then the combustion chamber in the middle, where aviation fuel is introduced to the compressed air, and then set ablaze, and then you have high pressure, this time around gaseous air sent to the compressor just before the exhaust, which further compresses the gaseous air into high pressure air, and then sent out through the exhaust. And by the Newton's principle of action and reaction equal and opposite, the pod moves forward just as the gaseous air is moving backwards. And because those poles are attached strongly and permanently to the body of the aircraft, what do they do? They take along, because they have huge thrust, they take along the airplane. That's what it's all about. And so, like I was saying, for a four-engine aircraft, for instance, if one goes by like it did yesterday, you shut it down, and if there's fire, you send in one or two bursts of fire extinguishing materials that are inbuilt in the airplane, put out the fire, and then make the necessary adjustment, and then use the rest of the engines to fly to the nearest airport for emergency landing.
It actually has about 4 engines.
That's correct. And so
the two that we usually
even with two engines, Joe, there is a principle known in aviation and flying as dead engine, dead foot. And I'm going to explain that very quickly before we go into the business of the day, because we'll have a huge one today. We're going to be dealing with the rise and fall of Nigeria Airways, part one. It's awesome and very graphic. So we need a lot of time to deal with that. But let me tell you about now. What happens is, if for instance the right engine dies, the thrust from the left engine naturally, let me use our miniature here to show you what usually happens. You are tearing away, and suddenly this engine goes bad. Boom! What happens is that the thrust from this engine drives the airplane to the side of the one that has lost thrust, because there's no balance anymore. But remember the rudder that you have here, which gives you your left and right yaw. That's the job of the rudder. The little plate you find somewhere here going left and right. What happens is that when he moves this way, the wind hits it and pushes the plane the other way. If he moves the other way, the wind pushes it, high pressure wind, and moves it that way. Now, the meaning of dead engine, dead foot is that when a right engine dies, the right foot must get out of the pedal. You don't step on it. You step your left foot of the living engine, and it will drive the rudder to the opposite direction, and so the wind pressure hitting the rudder would now compensate for the thrust coming from the engine that is alive, keeping the airplane stable and moving straight as required. But it demands now the skill of the pilot to know when he lets go. For instance, if you now want to bank and yaw to the right where that dead engine is, you're not going to be now using...
But why? Because you always talk about the fact that the airplane is a faithful machine.
Yes.
Why didn't that airplane A380, give a sign?
Oh, Joe, you can't say that. Before they eventually bust of that engine, the pilots would have long known. It would have given them signal that something was going wrong. Occasionally, like it might have been the case, yesterday, something may just lose out unexpectedly, and then get tangled with those fans and create a complete crash of the engine, suddenly without notice. I mean, these are mechanical things, Joe, don't forget. Why we talk about faithfulness is that you have thousands and thousands of sensors monitoring every inch of the operation of an airplane. And so, the pilots get to know, even when you're sitting on the ground and you come in for the day in a mood that is usually known as dark and cold.
While we will put that on hold, let's look at the business of the day. We all know that none of the passengers was hurt yesterday, and
that's the faithfulness and the skill of the pilots.
It's a good thing, and immediately an arrangement was made. An aircraft, took the passengers to their destination. Now let's look at the rise and fall of Nigerian Airways. We've got 50 minutes.
Yeah, Joe, remember we were at a seminar a few days ago, during which I was required to do a delivery on attracting investment in the Nigerian aviation industry, the role of government and industry players. And then I structured the paper in such a way to show that every business model in the books was tried with Nigeria Airways, and every one of them failed. And so as government begins to look at another business model that has been tried before in order to get the aviation sector moving, my business at that seminar was to let them know that every model was tried with Nigeria Airways and they failed. So the issue is not a business model. The issue is, you know what? The issue is with Nigerians. We haven't changed. We're still the same people who have been all these years, and even though the government of the day is singing a song of change, Nigerians have yet to change. And until we begin to do things properly, mind the legality of the things we do and stick by the law, because I always say to anyone that bothers to listen to me, lawlessness makes you weak. Your strength lies in being law-abiding. And we have a whole lot of lawlessness in high and low places in Nigeria.
Okay, so let's start with one of that. We have...
just keep rolling our beautiful Nigeria Airways as I give you the delivery. Well, happy independence. Nigerians are already happy with that, and it's come and gone.
We just coincided with your birthday.
And it was my birthday as well. Joe, guess how old I was yesterday?
60.
60, and I'm so happy. My life had just begun. all right, very well. Get us the lovely photograph. That's the Nigeria Airways, Joe. In the late 80s, 90, 91, 92, I flew that airline minimum of once every month to London. It was awesome. The best airline that you could ever, fly with in Africa. And the best set of pilots in the world. The world admitted that Nigerian pilots were the safest and the most skillful in Nigeria Airways. Now, as we read through what we did with this airline, Joe, your heart will bleed. And I'm sure Nigerians that are watching there are all ears to hear what happened to Nigeria Airways. And then let's hit off as they keep rolling the lovely photographs of our Nigeria Airways, and you're going to see the interior with our national color when they come to the interior.
What really happened?
Yeah, here we go. And I said attracting investment in the Nigerian, just like we did, just to let people understand the basis of what we're doing today, and we're going to be doing for another 2 or 3 weeks. Attracting investment in the Nigerian aviation industry is clearly dependent on availability of the right legal framework and sustainable enabling environment. Investors are usually attracted to business environments that are stable, predictable, legal, survivable, and profitable. As a way of answering the question raised by this topic, I shall, with deep and painful nostalgic feelings, call our memories back to the beginning and end of Nigeria Airways, the best airline Africa and indeed the world ever knew. The beginning and continued big successes of the Emirates Airlines, Kenya Airways, and Ethiopian Airlines will also be x-rayed. Comparing and contrasting the two airlines was certainly lovely young ladies. They were their best at the time in question. But you're going to see what happened to all of them. Answer the question this topic is begging for. So as we move on, and I say history of Nigeria Airways. Nigeria Airways Limited was founded on 23rd August 1958 after the dissolution of West African Airways Corporation, WAAC, formerly known as WAC. Although it commenced operations precisely on the 1st of October 1958, Joe, as my mother was celebrating my first birthday and doing some sadaka for young children, Nigeria Airways was being launched into the air on the 1st of October 1958. I was only one on that day. It bore the name WAC Nigeria until 22nd January 1971, when it formally rebranded as Nigeria Airways. So it was actually rebranded as Nigeria Airways a couple of years after it went into business, and that was on the 22nd of January 1971. Between 1958 and 1961, the government of Nigeria had only a 51% majority share. Dempster Airlines and BOAC, that is the British Overseas Airways Corporation, had the rest of the shares. But in 1961, the Nigerian government boosted its ownership to 100% and made it Nigeria's flag bearer. Wonderful idea, at the time. But let's move on and see what happened.
Now, the prices are then
look at the tax. The tax at the time was just 5 naira, and the lovely ticket of Nigeria Airways. Go ahead.
From Lagos to New York, then 17,400.
Yeah, precisely.
How easy was it to get that amount of money there?
Oh, well, as tough as getting 17 million today. I did Lagos to Taiwan with 3,200 naira. Yeah, via Hong Kong in 1987. So a whole lot has gone wrong here, and we must fix it. We must get serious as a people. We've joked for too long. We must put an end to the joke and get serious.
Who should get serious?
Nigerians, everyone. Both the high, medium, and low. We are all messing around, and we must put it to an end.
The bulk of the seriousness.
Joe, let's move on.
Okay.
Managed by a number of foreign airlines, British Airways, the Dutch KLM, the South African Airways. Its operations concentrated in West Africa and some points in Europe, North America, and Saudi Arabia. In the early 1980s, while being managed by the KLM team, Nigeria Airways was at its peak with a fleet of over 30 aircraft. Records had it that in spite of its successes, it was behind in its accounts by 2 years. Joe, a successful, look at the lovely interior of Nigeria Airways of those days with national colors. Joe, I flew in there every month in 1987, 88, 89, and it was awesome. We killed it. You're going to see how. Let's move on. 2 years at accounting. At a time, it was at its peak with 30 airplanes in its kitty, but no accountability. Models of airplanes, I'm going to stay away from those models because it doesn't matter to our viewers. Aircraft leasing was Nigeria Airways' common practice. They had money. They were raking in money to have owned their own aircraft. But they chose, for some strange reasons, to lease. Take note of that and keep it in your mind as we move on. Some of its lessors included Leka Airways, Ethiopian Airlines, and Aer Lingus. Mismanagement, corruption, and overstaffing were identified as the poison that killed Nigeria Airways. At the time of closure in 2003, because that was when it eventually got killed and buried, it had huge debt burden. I'll move on very quickly. As a way of ensuring efficiency and profitability, the airline signed a training contract agreement with KLM in September 1979. The contract was similar to the one also signed with TWA, that's the American airline, in 1972. A military coup d'etat, which took place in the last day of 1983, remember that military coup, changed the structure of government and the airline. Bernard Bamford, those in the aviation industry know him, was appointed new managing director at the time. He promptly dismissed all the KLM trained staff of the airline. Joe, in a single swoop, if you come back to us, the viewers would really understand how painful and how much our hearts are bleeding. Here was a beautiful airline that had its staff properly trained by those that have experience. Please do come back to us that have staff also were trained and all the aircraft in place, doing so well. And then suddenly there was a coup d'etat and the military took over and appointed one, Bamford man. He just got in there. The first thing he did was, in a single swoop, he sacked all the trained staff of the airline. Now, having square pegs fitted in round holes.
Now, to cut long story short because of the time, what can we do to bring back Nigeria Airways?
Joe, if you do not understand all that went wrong, you will never be able to answer that question. Let's just move on.
The issue is just with the time.
Joe, we still have 5 minutes to run. I know when we started. So don't push me that way, please. Let's do this. Let's do justice to Nigerians. Quickly. Introduction, Joe. I got 5 more minutes. Introduction of IMF policies coupled with corruption, mismanagement, and overstaffing ignited the economic fire that consumed the airline from the 1980s. Joe, in early 1987, for accumulated debts of $1,100,000 US, the International Air Transport Association (IATA) suspended Nigeria Airways from the clearinghouse. If you don't understand some of these details, you will never understand how we're going to be able to solve this problem. All right? A status that meant that the airline could neither issue tickets to fly on other IATA member airlines nor have the other member airlines do business with Nigeria Airways. Okay, by late 1987, Nigeria Airways, operating with a monthly revenue of $5 million US, an expenditure of $5,175,000 US dollars. They will rake in $5 million US dollars, but spend $5,175,000. So they were running in deficit. All right, per month.
More than the end.
Yes, per month. Accumulated debts of approximately $250 million US dollars, leading to the airline into increasing international ticket fare by 20% and domestic ticket fare by 100% in order to raise funds. But look at the consequence of that. The consequence of this was reduced passenger traffic. You're solving one problem and creating the other. Finding this situation unacceptable, the government ordered the airline to downsize its workforce immediately. Now, in December 1988, Joe, the airline dismissed 3,000 employees, a third of its workforce at the time, and discontinued flights of a number of East African destinations, ceding some of its routes to a private airline, Okada Air. Okada Air also went down. So within the same, we'll round off now. My dear viewers, because time is always chasing us on this program, we will do part two. We'll do part two, next week.
But before then, we've got just 3 minutes. Let's just.
All right. So within the same late 1980s, the airline lost a deposit.
Let's just look at what we can do. I've asked that. Let me ask it again. It's a public holiday. Nigerians are watching policy.
Maybe you should have.
Now, it's good we have to go through this history, but the issue is how can we have this thing back in the air?
Joe, you haven't heard everything that went wrong. Even the new, even the new concession that we are considering has been done before. It failed. It's not the business model that is the issue.
What is the issue?
The issue is that as a people, we are busy misbehaving. We must have a sense of responsibility. We must begin again to train our young people to know how to do. Each sector must have a training that is tailored to that sector and have well-trained people behaving well, doing what they have to do, and ensuring that business is going as planned.
What would you recommend? A national carrier that will be managed by Nigerian government, or a national carrier that will be managed by private?
Answering that question, Joe, let me remind you that this awesome airline called the Emirates is 100% owned by the government of UAE and is doing awesomely well. Ethiopian Airline is government owned and is doing awesomely well. Kenyan Airways is owned by Kenyan government, is doing so well. Joe, South African Airways, come on, it's not about government running business. It's about sense of responsibility. When you employ people who are serious-minded, well-trained, responsible, now government must stay away from interference. Part of the problem that Nigeria Airways had was that each time they took out from Lagos to London, half of the seats were occupied by non-paying passengers, staff of the airline, government officials. Come on, Joe, we did things that were extremely unacceptable.
So if we're going to go back to business, we have to change from what we did in the time.
That's correct.
I must thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you once again. Happy birthday in arrears.
Thank you.
It has been with Nigeria Aviation Freak, Mr. Goddy Ike, of course.
Next week, we're going to do part two of this same rise and fall of Nigeria Airways.
Yeah. Until then, take a quick break. When we come back, it shall be time to look at the bill to regulate